Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman wasn't just a genius, he made genius look fun. With an IQ of 125, he didn't fit the traditional mold of an intellectual prodigy, but his brilliance lay in how he thought, not just what he knew. He was a cornerstone of the Manhattan Project, helping unlock the secrets of the atomic world, but it was his later work in quantum electrodynamics that cemented his legacy. His Feynman diagrams transformed the way physicists visualize particle interactions, making the incomprehensible almost intuitive. But Feynman wasn't just about equations. He was a storyteller, a prankster, and a relentless problem solver. He cracked safes at Los Alamos for fun, not to steal secrets, but to prove that no lock was unbreakable. His mind worked like a puzzle, constantly searching for new ways to see the world. And when he wasn't revolutionizing physics, he was captivating students with his legendary lectures, breaking down the universe into bite-sized, exhilarating revelations. His charisma made physics feel like an adventure, inspiring generations to see science not as a rigid discipline, but as a playground for curiosity. Even decades after his passing, his influence lingers in classrooms and laboratories, proving that intelligence isn't just about knowing the answers. It's about asking the right questions. Orson Welles. Orson Welles wasn't just a filmmaker. He was a force of nature, a prodigy whose intellect burned too brightly for the rigid confines of Hollywood. By the age of 5, he was reading Shakespeare. By his teenage years, he had mastered painting, acting, and directing. But it was at 23 that he made history, co-writing, directing, and starring in Citizen Kane, a film still hailed as one of the greatest of all time. His mind worked at a speed few could match, constantly innovating, constantly challenging the status quo. His genius wasn't limited to film. In 1938, Welles orchestrated the infamous War of the Worlds radio broadcast, a performance so realistic that it sent Americans into a panic, convinced an alien invasion was underway. It was a testament to his understanding of storytelling, psychology, and the power of media. But for all his brilliance, Welles was also a rebel. Hollywood found him difficult. His vision was uncompromising and his demands relentless. He refused to play by the industry's rules, and it cost him. Studios wrestled control from his hands, his projects were butchered in editing rooms, and he spent much of his later career struggling to fund his films. Yet, despite the battles, Welles never stopped pushing boundaries. Whether through cinema, radio, or theater, his mind was always at work, always ahead of its time. He wasn't just a director, he was a storyteller, a provocateur, a genius who reshaped entertainment forever. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton wasn't just a master of slapstick, he was a cinematic engineer, a man who turned physics into punchlines and danger into dazzling spectacle. Unlike many of his peers, who relied on stunt doubles or rudimentary trickery, Keaton meticulously designed his own death-defying sequences, calculating angles, momentum, and structural integrity with the precision of an architect. One of his most famous stunts, the collapsing house facade in Steamboat Bill Jr., wasn't just a gamble with fate. It was a mathematical equation brought to life. Keaton stood in the precise spot where an open window would fall around him, missing him by mere inches. Any slight miscalculation and he would have been crushed. But Keaton wasn't just a fearless performer, he was a problem solver. He engineered moving set pieces like the rotating house in The Electric House that functioned like intricate mechanical puzzles. His understanding of physics allowed him to create illusions that seemed to defy gravity, like when he ran up a falling ladder or leaped from a moving train with perfect timing. Off-screen, Keaton was equally brilliant. He was a skilled mathematician, often sketching out his stunts with geometric precision before executing them. He even held patents for mechanical inventions, proving that his genius extended far beyond the silver screen. Keaton's intelligence wasn't just about making movies. It was about redefining what was possible in cinema itself. Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr wasn't just a Hollywood icon, she was a bona fide genius. While audiences marveled at her beauty on screen, behind the scenes, she was revolutionizing technology. During World War II, she teamed up with composer George Antheil to develop a frequency-hopping communication system designed to prevent enemy forces from jamming torpedo signals. The concept was ahead of its time, utilizing synchronized frequency changes inspired by player piano rolls. But the US Navy dismissed it, failing to see its potential. Decades later, that same technology became the backbone of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Lamarr's brilliance wasn't a side note. It was central to modern connectivity. Yet for most of her life, she was seen only as a glamorous actress, her scientific achievements ignored. It wasn't until long after her Hollywood days that she finally received recognition, including an induction into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014. She once said, "Inventions are easy for me to do. I don't have to work on ideas, they come naturally." And that's the mark of true genius, seeing the future long before the world catches up. Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson wasn't just brilliant, he was extraordinary. A valedictorian at Rutgers University, he dominated both academics and athletics, excelling in football, basketball, and debate. But his genius didn't stop there. He mastered over 20 languages, using his linguistic prowess to connect with global audiences during his performances. Imagine a man who could sing in Russian, converse fluently in Chinese, and deliver speeches in multiple European languages, all with the same commanding presence that made him a world-renowned performer. His intelligence wasn't just book smarts, it was a tool for cultural diplomacy, a bridge between nations in an era of deep political divides. But being outspoken came at a cost. At the height of his fame, Robeson's activism made him a target of government surveillance. Blacklisted during the McCarthy era, he was stripped of his passport and silenced in the United States. Yet even as doors closed, his intellect and resilience never wavered. He took his message overseas, finding support in countries that recognized his brilliance and his fight for justice. Robeson's legacy isn't just that of an entertainer or an athlete, it's that of a scholar, a polyglot, and a fearless activist who refused to be silenced. Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov wasn't just a writer, he was a human encyclopedia with an IQ estimated at 160, and an insatiable curiosity that spanned everything from robotics to Shakespeare. With a PhD in biochemistry, he could have spent his life in a lab, but instead he chose to shape the future with words. Over 500 books later, his visions of artificial intelligence and space travel are eerily accurate, predicting everything from self-driving cars to the rise of machine learning. His 3 laws of robotics influence real-world AI ethics, proving that his imagination wasn't just ahead of his time, it was guiding it. Despite his scientific mind, Asimov had a deep love for storytelling, seamlessly blending fact with fiction. He believed science fiction wasn't just entertainment, it was a roadmap for humanity's future. His work continues to inspire, proving that intelligence isn't just about knowing facts, it's about envisioning what comes next. Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir. Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir weren't just intellectuals, they were an unstoppable force that reshaped philosophy itself. Sartre, the father of existentialism, challenged the world to accept radical freedom, while Beauvoir's feminist masterpiece, The Second Sex, shattered illusions about gender roles. But what made them truly remarkable wasn't just their ideas, it was how they lived them. Their relationship defied convention, a lifelong partnership built on debate, passion, and an unrelenting pursuit of truth. Imagine them in a smoky Parisian cafe, locked in hours-long discussions, dissecting everything from metaphysics to morality. They weren't just theorists, they were revolutionaries, pushing the boundaries of thought and society. Their radical ideas made them both revered and controversial, yet their legacy endures, proving that intelligence isn't just about knowledge, it's about daring to think differently. Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson wasn't just a master of horror, she was a literary genius who understood the human mind in ways few writers could. Her short story The Lottery, published in 1948, left readers in shock, peeling back the layers of society to reveal the unsettling truth about blind tradition and collective cruelty. But Jackson's brilliance wasn't just in her ability to terrify. She was deeply versed in folklore, superstition, and psychology, weaving these elements into her stories with chilling precision. She had an almost scientific approach to fear, dissecting the human psyche with the precision of a surgeon. Despite her intellectual prowess, she faced relentless gender discrimination in the literary world, often overshadowed by her male contemporaries. Still, she pressed on, crafting narratives that would outlast the critics and redefine modern horror. Today, her works are studied not just for their eerie atmospheres, but for their profound psychological depth, proving that Jackson wasn't just writing horror, she was writing the truth. Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer wasn't just a chess player, he was a phenomenon. A child prodigy with an IQ reportedly over 180, Fischer became the US chess champion at just 14, outmaneuvering opponents with a near superhuman grasp of strategy. But it was his 1972 World Chess Championship match against Boris Spassky that cemented his legacy. Played at the height of the Cold War, this wasn't just a game, it was a battle between ideologies, with Fischer representing the West and Spassky, the Soviet chess machine. The world watched as Fischer, unpredictable and demanding, refused to play unless his conditions were met. When he finally sat down at the board, he delivered a performance so brilliant it stunned even his harshest critics. His victory shattered Soviet dominance in chess, but his genius came with a price. As the years passed, Fischer's behavior grew more erratic. Paranoia, reclusiveness, and controversial statements led to his exile from the United States. He spent his later years wandering the globe, a man consumed by his own mind. Despite his tragic downfall, Fischer's legacy in chess remains unparalleled, his game still studied, his brilliance still admired. His life was proof that genius and madness often walk a fine line. Katharine Hepburn. At a time when actresses were expected to play by the rules, she rewrote them. Raised in an intellectually stimulating household, she carried that love of knowledge to Bryn Mawr College, where she immersed herself in literature and philosophy. But Hepburn's brilliance wasn't just academic. It was strategic. She read voraciously, debated politics on set, and outmaneuvered studio executives to secure an unprecedented level of creative control over her career. While other actresses were at the mercy of the studio system, Hepburn dictated her own terms, handpicking roles that challenged conventions and solidified her as one of Hollywood's most enduring icons. Her intelligence wasn't just about book smarts, it was about knowing how to navigate an industry that wasn't built for independent women and bending it to her will. Maya Deren. Maya Deren wasn't just a filmmaker. She was a cinematic philosopher, a visionary who saw film as a portal into the subconscious. With a background in literature and philosophy from Smith College, she approached filmmaking as an intellectual and artistic experiment, rejecting Hollywood's rigid storytelling in favor of dreamlike, symbolic narratives. Her groundbreaking film, Meshes of the Afternoon, created in 1943 on a shoestring budget, remains one of the most influential avant-garde films ever made. Deren's meticulous understanding of psychology and movement allowed her to manipulate time and space on screen in ways that had never been seen before. She believed that film wasn't just about telling a story, it was about creating an experience, a philosophy she articulated when she said, "A truly creative work of art creates a new reality." Despite facing resistance in a male-dominated industry, she carved her own path, pioneering experimental techniques that would later inspire directors like David Lynch and Christopher Nolan. Her work wasn't just ahead of its time, it redefined what cinema could be. James Baldwin. James Baldwin wasn't just a writer. He was an intellectual powerhouse whose words could cut through the noise of history like a scalpel. From a young age, Baldwin consumed books with an insatiable hunger, devouring philosophy, history, and politics. This relentless curiosity shaped him into one of the most articulate and sharpest minds of the 20th century. But Baldwin didn't just write. He debated, he challenged, he confronted. His legendary debate with William F. Buckley Jr. at Cambridge University in 1965 was a masterclass in rhetoric, where he dismantled the American dream's illusion with surgical precision. His ability to distill complex social issues into searing, unforgettable prose made him not just an artist, but a warrior of thought. The sheer depth of his intellect ensured that his words weren't just read. They were felt, they were lived, and they still resonate today. Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke wasn't just a science fiction writer, he was a prophet of the technological age. Long before satellites were circling the Earth, Clarke envisioned a world where geostationary satellites revolutionized global communication. In a 1945 paper, he laid out the blueprint for what would later become reality, decades ahead of its time. His deep grasp of physics and engineering wasn't just theoretical, it was predictive. He didn't just imagine the future, he mapped it out with eerie precision. His novel 2001: A Space Odyssey wasn't just a cinematic masterpiece, it was a chillingly accurate forecast of artificial intelligence, space travel, and human evolution. Clarke's intellect wasn't confined to fiction, his ideas shaped real-world innovation. His ability to see beyond the present earned him a reputation as one of the greatest futurists of the 20th century, proving that sometimes science fiction isn't fiction at all. It's just the future waiting to happen. Nina Simone. By the time she was a child, her talent was already undeniable. Born Eunice Wayman in the early 20th century, she was playing piano by ear at just 3 years old. Her raw ability earned her a spot at the prestigious Juilliard School, where she honed her classical technique. But Simone wasn't content with just mastering the works of Bach and Beethoven. She wanted to make something new. Her deep understanding of classical music gave her the tools to blend jazz, blues, and soul in a way no one had ever heard before. Every note she played carried the weight of history, and every lyric she sang was a declaration of truth. But Simone's brilliance wasn't limited to music. She had a razor-sharp intellect and an unshakable sense of justice. At the height of her fame in the 1960s, she became one of the most outspoken artists of the civil rights movement. Songs like Mississippi Goddam weren't just music, they were battle cries. She used her platform to speak out against racial injustice, risking her career in the process. While many artists of the era played it safe, Simone refused to be silenced. Her intelligence wasn't just about raw IQ, it was about vision, about courage, about seeing the world for what it was and daring to demand something better. Even today, her influence can be felt in the work of artists who use their music to challenge the status quo. Nina Simone wasn't just ahead of her time, she was timeless. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr was more than just the sharp-witted attorney Perry Mason. He was a true intellectual powerhouse. His knowledge of the law wasn't just for show. Burr was an obsessive reader with an encyclopedic understanding of legal principles. This allowed him to bring an unmatched authenticity to his role, making Perry Mason one of the most convincing legal dramas of its time. But his brilliance didn't stop at the courtroom. Burr was fluent in multiple languages, including Spanish and Italian, and had a deep fascination with world history. His ability to absorb and retain information was almost photographic, impressing even the most seasoned scholars. Beyond acting, Burr had an unexpected passion: orchids. He wasn't just a casual gardener, he became a highly respected orchid grower, cultivating rare species and even naming some after his co-stars. His greenhouse housed thousands of exotic plants, a testament to his meticulous nature and scientific curiosity. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his intellect was his generosity. Burr quietly funded numerous scholarships and charities, ensuring that bright but underprivileged students had access to education. He never sought recognition for his philanthropy, proving that his intelligence wasn't just about knowledge, it was about using it to make a difference. Whether on screen or in real life, Burr's mind was always working, always learning, and always giving back. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney wasn't just a Hollywood beauty, she was a force of intellect. Fluent in multiple languages, she could seamlessly switch between French, Italian, and Spanish, making her one of the most well-read actresses of her time. But her intelligence ran deeper than just linguistics. She had a deep understanding of psychology, which she used to craft some of the most layered and enigmatic female characters in film noir. Whether it was her chilling performance in Laura, or her unsettling turn in Leave Her to Heaven, Tierney brought a level of psychological complexity that set her apart from her peers. Her intellect wasn't just admired on screen, world leaders took notice too. John F. Kennedy was reportedly captivated by her wit and charm, engaging in long conversations with her about politics, literature, and philosophy. But perhaps her greatest intellectual achievement came later in life, when she penned her critically acclaimed autobiography, Self-Portrait. The book wasn't just a Hollywood memoir, it was a deeply introspective look at her struggles with mental health, proving that Tierney's brilliance extended far beyond the silver screen. Burgess Meredith. Burgess Meredith wasn't just a remarkable actor, he was a scholar at heart. A classically trained performer, he had an encyclopedic knowledge of literature and could recite Shakespeare and classical poetry from memory. Colleagues were often stunned by his ability to weave lines from Hamlet or King Lear into casual conversation, making even the most mundane moments feel like a theatrical performance. But Meredith wasn't just book smart, he was a man of principle. During the McCarthy era, his outspoken intellectualism and advocacy for free thought led to him being blacklisted, a move that could have ended his career. Instead, he doubled down, proving that his commitment to knowledge and artistic integrity mattered more than Hollywood's approval. Beyond acting, he was a gifted writer and director, crafting thought-provoking plays and films that challenged audiences. His intelligence and wit made him a mentor to younger actors, many of whom credited him with shaping their careers. Jack Nicholson once referred to him as one of the sharpest minds he had ever worked with. Whether on screen or off, Meredith's brilliance was undeniable, and his influence on the industry lasted long after his time in the spotlight. Robert Montgomery. Robert Montgomery wasn't just a Hollywood leading man. He was a strategist, a war hero, and a trusted advisor to one of the most powerful men in the world. While many Golden Age actors were content with the glitz and glamour of the silver screen, Montgomery's mind was wired for something bigger. His intelligence wasn't just theoretical, It was tactical, sharpened by years of military service and political maneuvering. During World War II, he didn't just support the war effort from afar, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy, serving as a naval intelligence officer, and later commanding PT boats in both the European and Pacific theaters. His strategic mind made him invaluable, helping to coordinate operations that directly influenced the war's outcome. But Montgomery's brilliance didn't stop at military tactics. After the war, he seamlessly transitioned into politics, becoming one of the first Hollywood stars to step into the world of government consulting. His expertise in media and communication caught the attention of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who brought him on as an advisor. At the time, television was a new and powerful tool, and Montgomery helped shape Eisenhower's public image, coaching him on how to appear authoritative and composed on camera. According to film historian Thomas Doherty, Montgomery radiated calm authority and seasoned professionalism, a quality that made him indispensable in helping Eisenhower navigate this emerging medium. But his political involvement wasn't without controversy. He testified before the House of Un-American Activities Committee, aligning himself with anti-communist sentiments that divided Hollywood. While some saw him as a patriot, others viewed his stance as a betrayal of the industry. Yet despite the backlash, Montgomery remained steadfast in his beliefs, proving that his intellect wasn't just about strategy, it was about conviction. He was a rare figure in Hollywood, a man whose intelligence extended far beyond the scripts he memorized, shaping both military and political history in ways few actors ever could. Teresa Wright. Teresa Wright was not your typical Hollywood starlet. While many actresses of her time embraced the glitz and glamour, Wright had a different priority: intellectual fulfillment. She refused to conform to the industry's superficial expectations, insisting on playing intelligent, complex female roles rather than eye-candy side characters. This wasn't just a preference, it was a principle that she embedded into her career from the very beginning. In a move almost unheard of in classic Hollywood, Wright negotiated a contract that specifically barred her from publicity stunts and glamour shoots. She wasn't interested in being a studio's manufactured starlet. She wanted to be recognized for her talent and intellect alone, and she had the brains to back it up. Off-screen, Wright was an avid reader with a deep appreciation for literature and philosophy. She engaged in discussions that went far beyond the typical Hollywood chatter, often debating complex ideas with scholars and intellectuals. Her sharp mind made her stand out in an industry that often valued looks over substance. While other actresses were busy maintaining their public image, Wright was more likely to be found engrossed in a novel or discussing existentialism. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a defining part of who she was. But prioritizing intellect over stardom came with its challenges. Hollywood was not built for actresses who rejected its traditional mold, and Wright's refusal to play the game likely cost her some roles. Yet she never wavered. To her, the mind was the most valuable asset, and she proved that intelligence could be just as captivating as beauty. Even as the industry evolved, Wright remained a symbol of integrity, proving that a sharp mind could shine just as brightly as the biggest movie star. Lily Palmer. Lily Palmer wasn't just a stunning actress, she was a true intellectual force. Fluent in multiple languages, she moved effortlessly between cultures, captivating audiences in both Europe and Hollywood. But her brilliance extended far beyond the screen. Palmer was a voracious reader with a deep love for literature and philosophy, often engaging in deep discussions with some of the greatest minds of her time. Unlike many of her peers, who relied solely on their looks or charm, Palmer's intelligence set her apart, making her one of the most respected figures in the industry. Her sharp mind wasn't just for conversation, she was also a gifted writer. Palmer penned several books, showcasing her keen storytelling abilities and deep understanding of human nature. Her memoirs and novels weren't just vanity projects, they were critically acclaimed works that reflected her intellect and wit. It was rare for an actress of her era to be taken seriously as a writer. But Palmer defied expectations, proving that she was more than just a glamorous starlet. Despite her undeniable beauty, it was her intellect that truly defined her. Directors and fellow actors admired her for her depth, and she was often sought after for roles that required more than just a pretty face. She balanced her acting and writing careers with remarkable ease, earning the respect of both the literary and film worlds. In an industry that often prioritized appearance over intellect, Palmer stood as a rare example of someone who had both in abundance. Her legacy isn't just one of cinematic excellence, it's one of intelligence, artistry, and an unshakable dedication to the power of words. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.